Hi there! In today's video, we're going to talk about pruning an apple tree when you've been doing it wrong. Kind of a weird topic, you might think, but I have been seeing a lot of videos on how to prune an apple tree correctly. Some of that research is a little outdated, and then I've also seen some where they get it right from the start, but I think a lot of us, and myself included, haven't known this the whole time. So you're like, okay, well, I've been pruning my apple tree or not, and for this many years, and so now I want to course correct and start pruning it the right way. So I thought I would make a video on how to do exactly that when your tree has already been somewhat established. Welcome to True Freedom Permaculture, where we discuss natural living and how to have a green thumb, even if you weren't born with one. Now, this pruning technique, aligning with permaculture principles, is that we're going with the flow as opposed to trying to oppose it. So because of that, it should be less maintenance for you in the future. And what I mean by that is that you shouldn't have to prune the suckers off of the branches as often. The other thing to consider too is just because you haven't been doing this technique from the start doesn't mean that you won't get fruit. I have gotten apples, and it just means that there might be a better way of doing it. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
First, let's talk about what you'll need. So today I needed a ladder. You also need a good pair of gloves, that'll come in handy, a pair of hand shears or hand pruners, and a pair of longer levered pruners too. And depending on how tall your tree is, I do recommend getting a pole saw. It's basically like a little saw attached to a long stick so you can get up high and reach things. But today I had to work with a hand saw, which I made it work, but I think I'm definitely going to be purchasing a pole saw soon. Now that I had all of my equipment, what I started doing was from the first 4 feet, so from the ground to 4 feet up the tree, I was removing all of the lower branches.
I am getting a lot of my information from Stefan Subkowiak, and he has a channel with his name, and this is my permaculture orchard, and he has been doing this for a lot longer than I have. From his videos, he has been talking about how normally, you're encouraged to prune the branches like this. So assuming that my body is the trunk of the tree and the branches go like this, but actually they're supposed to be, down like this. I have this apple tree that I planted about 5 years ago, and I haven't been pruning it as often as I should have. And then when I started to do it, I started to do it the more traditional way. But I tried to kind of adapt my ideas and thoughts as I take in new information. And so now that I'm learning, I was like, well, shoot, I've kind of already set up the tree in this way, and you'll see a little bit later on what I mean by that. So let's go out, head out to my garden, and I will show you exactly how I decided to prune the apple tree.
I had to decide which established branch was going to be the trunk of the tree, and from the trunk, that is where I would base all of my other cuts off of. So I pointed just now to the one that I decided was going to be the trunk, and it wasn't the easiest thing because none of my branches shot straight up. So it's sort of like, okay, well, this one's like a little less crooked than the other ones, and it's kind of close to shooting up straight, so that is the one that I selected. Now here's where I had a decision to make because, like I mentioned, I had already started pruning my branches and training them to go upward, and now I'm sort of switching course. I needed to decide which branches had the smallest angles from the trunk of the tree. So I just, it's kind of painful to decide to trim off these beautiful apple branches, but in order to get a fresh start, I did need to do this. And any branches that were wider than 1 inch in diameter, that is when you really do need a saw, because just using shears is not going to work. With the remaining branches, I ran my hand along the bottom of them and just cleared off anything that would obstruct my hand. So a lot of these branches were super small, and I was able to just snap them off. But this is a really easy way of deciding which little branches you should remove. And the reason why is because any fruit that grows on these branches is going to be shielded out from the sun since they're off the bottom, and they're not going to get good airflow, so they're going to be more susceptible to disease as well. So it's best to just leave the fruit growing over the branch as opposed to under the branch. Here's a specific example that I really wanted to show you all. You're probably like, well, why didn't she remove that one small branch that was coming off the underside? This is the branch that I was just working on. Now, the reason why is because that small branch is actually going to become the new branch. Why? Well, because the angle is more horizontal as opposed to the established branch, which is going upwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the established branch at the part where it starts to really kind of curve up, and the new branch will have a different shape. I thought it might be helpful if I showed you all the difference in between a bud versus a branch. So this is a bud, and as you can see, it's turning into a cluster of leaves at the end. Sometimes they turn into like the blossoms, which will eventually develop into your fruit. So this one I just took off by hand, but this is the difference. So here is the branch here. So the branch is longer. So this is at least 12 inches long, and you're going to see it's still fairly young, so it's pretty pliable. But this was once a bud, and the bud has now developed into a branch. And the other way you can tell is that there are small, if you can see, buds coming off of it. So the buds will form off of the branch. You don't have to waste those branches that you've trimmed either. They can be great material to chop and drop and use as a mulch layer underneath your tree, depending on what you're planning on growing underneath the tree. If, for example, you're intentionally trying to grow something delicate underneath it, you might not want to use large pieces of branches because it might shade it out or, cover it up too much in order to get whatever you want down there established. This is the end result, and it does look a little awkward, but I think it'll be worth it in the end.
Don't forget, if you found this video helpful, please give it a like. That would help us out. And that's all I have for today. I will see you again soon.